My name is Sylvia Pelcz-Larsen. I was born in Spain, and then my father was in the Navy, and from what I understand, my parents met in Norway, where my mom is from, and he was in the Navy, so they were traveling around. I was born in Spain, but then we quickly moved to the US, and then at the age of probably 4 or 5, my parents separated, and my brother and I were brought back to Norway. So I grew up in Norway, and I lived in Norway from about probably 3, 4, or 5 till about 13. And then we moved back to the States. And there's a lot of history there. I could spend a lot of time talking about that, which probably we don't need to for the interview unless it comes up. And then I just don't want to get too sidetracked with that. But we moved back here, and I went to a series of boarding schools where I continuously got expelled. And then, right, all in the name of rebellion. And then over time, I ended up living in Boulder. I've moved around the U.S. quite a bit, but I ended up living in Boulder, and I really, really like it here. This is where I feel really grounded.
And how long have you been here?
I've been in Boulder for 21 years.
Yeah, we'll get to the other stuff.
Yeah, I'm not really sure like where to go with it, because it's a pretty colorful history, but I'm not really sure if that's where.
Yeah, we'll do it in the context of where those experiences will come up in the context of the questions I ask you.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm confident.
I'm sure. Plus, I'm not used to sitting here. I'm used to sitting there.
Oh. Is that okay?
Oh, it's totally great. It's a new experience. It's good.
Oh, because clients usually sit there?
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Here's her desk. Okay.
Look at the baby surfing the placenta wave.
I saw that before. I thought, what a
It's
great...
an alien surfers. It's ready. Well, I grew up in Norway, and it's not it's mostly Protestant, and we had to take classes in religion throughout school, and we had to take field trips to church for certain, like Easter, Christmas, and this and that. But I was never really attached to it. I was a little frightened of, Jesus on the cross. But at the same time, there was an underlying current that actually kept me interested. My parents were not very religious at all, and throughout these years, at one point, I insisted on being in the choir in the church. That was pretty short-lived. Then I decided I wanted to go to Sunday school, and my parents were like, "Oh my God, you can wake yourself up for that," And then I would go, and we got these little gold fish in a little net for every time we showed up, and there were all these kids in the group that had like hundreds of goldfish, and I was like, that's so cool. I want a net full of goldfish. But then I realized that it was going to take me years to get the net filled. So I was like, oh no, I'm not really interested in that. But I do think, in context of the question, that there was definitely that the church where I grew up definitely provided something that pushed me towards eventual discovery of things down the road. That's probably one of the things, but I wouldn't say that it was the epiphany.
Yeah. Do you remember any experience from your childhood that did strike you?
No, well, kind of, but it's really kind of strange. I remember like going fishing on the coastline of Norway, and prehistoric looking and weird. And I thought it was so cool. I was like, this is amazing. And immediately my dad was like, everybody aside, this thing is totally toxic, and threw it off the side of the boat. And I was like, that's my fish. But not, it's actually just a few years ago that I think about that event, that it was something probably from the very, very, very depths of the ocean. And my life in my spiritual relationships with, with my own life go kind of to that depth. And I think back on that fish as kind of this archetypal representation of the depths that my life would allow me to go to.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know if you've seen Blue Planet. Have you seen that series? It's amazing. They take, the BBC takes these cameras into like the totally unseen areas of the ocean. And what you see are all these creatures that really look like they should be in, sci-fi alien comic books, but they actually exist. And that's the kind of fish. And it wasn't until I saw that DVD that I was like, that is kind of that fish that I saw, but it came from a place that light never gets to.
How would you describe the spiritual path you're on now? Particular religion or spiritual practice?
Well, I do this sound healing work, and and all of the sounds that I use are calibrated to the planets. And so my spiritual path, I think, really involves an entry into everything, including the earth, but everything that's beyond too. That there is this incredible truth, light, God, energy that permeates the whole cosmos. And when I use these tools, I really feel like I actually tap into that, and the spirituality or the truth or whatever information runs through me as I'm working helps me understand something in a much greater context than just going to work and paying bills. Very cosmic. I would say that it's a very cosmically oriented philosophical pursuit.
Would you say you have a particular spiritual practice?
I think I lean towards Buddhism. I really resonate with a lot of the material I read there, yet I'm not initiated or I haven't participated in any Buddhist activities, but that's probably the closest that I can really relate to of a, organization that's recognized.
What is your concept of a God, or of God, or spirit, or higher power?
Light and sound and nature. I think really it's reflected in how we see nature. That's kind of how I see it. And light. I think light is key.
What's your experience of that energy then, of all those things in your day-to-day life?
I think when I'm using sound and synchronizing with that nature, as I have a client on the table, there's a dynamic energy that happens when the client, myself, and all of these, cosmic forces, including earthly forces, when all of that comes together, it reveals information that I can't really tap into in many other contexts. It's almost like in the Hindu tradition, there's there is something called Sam Yama and also Samadi, where three qualities of consciousness merge. And I really feel like when I do my work, I actually do experience Samadhi in varying degrees. Sometimes extremely profound, and sometimes it's just kind of a fleeting experience. But I think there's an innate archetypal quality that reveals itself through my work. And to me, that is part of what I would consider the energy of God to be when it expresses itself.
Describe for me the first time you feel like you experienced that energy? Or that wisdom or that insight?
Well, throughout when I was younger, when I was kind of getting into all kinds of trouble, I probably experienced it traveling around the country. I saw a ton of dead shows. I would just cruise around and I experienced it through that, but it became pretty obvious to me probably in my early 20s that wasn't really a genuine pursuit. And then I kept searching. I went to college. I cleaned houses for 10 years and really spent a lot of time just thinking as I was scrubbing showers, and then I eventually got the idea to go to acupuncture school because it had really helped me in my own health. And then I thought, it felt like I kind of had my finger on the pulse at that point. But then I had a really, really huge event. And I've had many, obviously, throughout my life, but probably the one big moment where my eyes were at least open to the possibilities of what we're talking about started with an unbelievable back pain. And I flew out to California to do some work at a convention there. And I actually experienced this sound healing work for myself. And the initial response I had to it was sitting at I think it was a Marriott or something at the San Francisco airport. And the view out the window wasn't really anything astounding. But when I had this work applied on my body, I really had this huge realization of what an incredible planet it is that we live on. That the planet is so amazing, and it's this jewel turning in the light of its sun, and we live on it, and it has these trees, and it has these rivers and oceans and animals and people and all these incredible things. And all of that in just a few moments all became clear to me really, really, really quickly. And that was probably the point of departure for where I'm at right now. That was really quite big. And after that, I realized, or I learned that, what was going through my spine was this Kundalini energy. And over time, I developed a relationship to, my physical body and the damage that I've done to it and the back pain that I get. And now, whenever I have back pain, I realize that it actually heralds a huge, incredible opportunity to come. That actually, for me, because my body is not that, my physical body isn't in a stellar shape as it could be. Now that energy starts moving through my spine, if I start getting back pain, I know really, really amazing things are about to happen. So that was a good one.
After that experience in the Marriott at SFO,
right?
What happened in your life?
Well, then I immediately bought these tuning forks, and I bought the book, and really kind of in a manic frenzy, because it was almost like all of this lost time. All of a sudden, I was like, whoa, this is what it's all about. I kind of, read through the book and immediately started incorporating it into my acupuncture practice, which was kind of well received, but not really, and it, this huge transformation began to happen in my life, which was actually kind of scary because I knew it to be the truth, but it wasn't as well received as I thought it was going to be. And so my practice went through this huge change of, some clients moving on to what was better for them. And then it also brought in a whole different kind of clientele into my practice. This probably took place over a year. Throughout the time, I thought I was going to lose my mind several times. I was like, what's going on? Lots of criticism, people thinking I was crazy, but at the same time, this current going through me, telling me that this was the truth. My rational mind was going, what are you doing to your livelihood? But then my heart was saying, too bad, you gotta go. So I just kept doing what I knew to be true. And over time, I actually became much stronger. And, my practice is amazing. It's totally amazing.
Guys from Cincinnati hunting you down.
Totally incredible. Yeah, that's really cool.
Would you ever say, within the context of how you see this energy, this wisdom, do you feel like you've ever been at a point in your life where you had to rely upon that? Where you just said,
I think I have to rely on it every day. Here, and not because I feel like I'm desperately about to lose faith or anything, but I feel that the world that we live in is so dynamic and things are changing so fast. And, I have great hope for the future, and I think everything's going to be just fine and wonderful. We're just at a time where that's particularly challenging to lay down the foundation for what we're moving towards. As I see the planet right now, I think we have to make some major changes, in our relationship to this earth. And I feel like I have to rely on the wisdom of my higher self, and also as this God force or Christ consciousness, whatever, as it moves through me, I have to rely that it's going to provide me with the resources and wisdom I need to help hold the space for people I work with every day. And one of the themes that always goes through my mind that I share with people is the whole saying of we need to step out on a limb. I think that's totally wrong. I don't think the limb is there. I think we have to step into, the unknown and have trust that the limb is going to grow in time for when we put our foot down. That it takes an enormous amount of trusting that there is something that's actually guiding us through the experience that we're collectively experiencing right now. Because really, I personally believe that it's so big that it's almost impossible for the three-dimensional conscious mind to actually grasp the vastness of what's happening.
What do you think's happening?
I think we're just laying down the foundation for a whole new world. All the changes that are, global warming, this and that, all of these. When you turn, I don't watch the news, I don't listen to the news, I can't deal with it. But from what I hear is, you turn on the TV and it's all horrible stimulus. And I don't think that's really what's happening. I think that possibly we're seeing a lot of challenges on the planet as we collectively just have to deal with some karma at this time. We have to kind of clear up all of the collective experience that we've shared as human beings, take responsibility for it, clean up to our best ability, but also move into a new world. Because I don't think that we can live on the planet with the consciousness that we have had up until this point. And Einstein said that we can't solve problems with the type of thinking that created the problems in the first place. So I think we're in the process of kind of becoming a new human race, so to speak, that we just have to change our entire relationship to what's happening on the planet and change our relationships. And I really do believe that we're laying down a foundation for a sustainable, beautiful place, like a mythological golden age. Like, I think we're moving towards that. I think we're really, but it just seems kind of ugly right now because we're having to do a little house cleaning. You know what I mean?
Tell me about a time where you doubted your faith or you lost your faith in this greater wisdom and direction.
I thought about that, and I can't say I, in my conscious mind, remember a time where I actually had that experience. Now, I've certainly had a fair amount of dark nights of the soul, but it really seems to me that whenever those types of life situations happen, there was something that actually I don't know how to phrase it, that I think I inherently knew that overcoming the challenge would actually bring gifts. So I never really felt like I lost faith in anything. I may have felt challenged, and maybe that challenge came at the wrong time, and maybe I've conveniently forgotten a time where I felt that, but in hindsight, and even when I was a teenager, I remember thinking back going, oh, all of these events have happened and led me to where I'm at right now, and this place isn't so bad. And so to me, anytime I may have had an opportunity to doubt my faith, it was actually an initiation to become closer to what I believed in.
How does the story of your parents' separation and your moving about play into what you believe today and what you practice?
It could be that we never really had a sense of having a solid foundation at home. There wasn't any suffering or abuse, but there was some rifts that made it, when I went to boarding school, I went to all these different places, and never really had one particular home base. And I think that cultivated a very independent spirit, and not feeling like I belonged to any particular family brought me to a point where I created my own sense of what family might mean. So I don't know if that helps answer the question. Yeah.
Just in the beginning, I know that you referred to that time of your life as being pretty poignant. And so I was just trying to give you an opportunity to share how that might have.
Well, I do remember when we left Norway, I was about 13, and I was kind of sad, oh my God, now we're going to leave again. And, I have these friends, but at the same time, there was a lot of peer pressure, and I was kind of a loser. And I remember, what I mean? And I was walking home, and I remember thinking, oh, this is going to be a huge opportunity. I'm moving to a country where nobody knows who I am. Nobody has any preconceived idea of who I should be. And I can actually become my authentic self because nobody knows who I am. that was kind of big. And I remember that very, very clearly.
Where did you move to?
We moved to Connecticut. So I remember, and once I kind of got that, then I thought, oh, this is going to be a cool move. And it's possible that I may have been a little young to have that big of a revelation, and that's probably what got me into a lot of trouble. Because, you know, this spirit, this indwelling spirit was like, dun, 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 you know, nobody can stop me. And I think it cultivated a disregard for authority, which, you know, I had to come to terms with a little bit later, but it was definitely a pretty radical time in my life. I think my greatest wish is that the light and the shadow are harmonized, and that all living beings, and especially human beings, can find a happy path to walk in the middle of those two. I think that would be awesome. I'm grateful for a lot of things. I don't know what I'm the most grateful for. I'm really grateful that I can read. I'm really grateful that I actually can set aside time to read books. I'm really grateful that I have a house to live in. And I'm really grateful for my practice. I'm grateful for, I can't even really think about anything I'm ungrateful for. Probably that we're all the same. I mean, that's a tough question for me. I think, like, when you ask that question, all these things kind of, like, how do I answer that question? And I don't think I know I'm not really attached to what somebody what they want to know, or what they do know about me. Just that I'm participating in the shifts we're experiencing. It's really weird to have the camera on me. Like, I feel like the whole world is watching.
That would be wonderful if they are at some point.
Yeah, right.
That would be a blessing.
Probably unity and diversity. You know, that everybody steps into their own power and really cultivate that, and recognize the boundaries that we need to have, and allow other people to have the same experience, and kind of put the competition on the back burner so that everyone can share their gifts and be really, really bright and brilliant, and that we can all do that in one big collective feast. So I think it was, what is now? We are in 2008. It must have been like 2005. You know, and I had just started kind of getting into astrology and understanding the precession of the equinoxes, and how the, you know, axis of the earth kind of goes through these constellations, and that we're leaving the age of Pisces and moving into the age of Aquarius. And I'm contemplating this for weeks and probably months, and really getting into it. And one day I'm driving down some street, and, you know, I see the fish, the fish that a lot of people have on their cars it's like the Jesus fish. And I'm driving behind this car going, man, the age of Pisces is over. Like, the fishes, that's done, you know? And I thought Jesus himself would probably be the first to come back and say, dudes, like, it's all about the age of Aquarius now. It's all about new ways of thinking, and and new technology and all that entails. So I thought, that fish glyph, that really worked really well for a long time, but we need a glyph for the age of Aquarius. So I went and I got a treatment from somebody, and in the midst of this treatment, it came to me, this glyph that combines the glyph for the planet Uranus with the Aquarius glyph. And then I started thinking about it, and really the archetype that embodies all of Aquarius and Uranus is Prometheus. Prometheus, who stole the fire from the gods and gave it back to humanity, which was a gift of enlightenment. And he is really, or that archetype is the ruler of the age that we're in right now. And he's also known as the Divine Rebel, which is why I decided to call the clinic the Divine Rebellion. And of course, as soon as I incorporated that name, I started getting into all kinds of trouble, but it was worth it. So that, we are rebels. And so in that unity and diversity, the unity piece is the Promethean piece. And the diversity is what I think, in one way, is what we've really learned from the age of Pisces. We've really gotten, the compassionate, unifying piece that we really need to have to love each other and support each other. And that group consciousness is really, really, really important, the collective experience. But we're now ready to have that experience from an independent perspective. So that's kind of what this clinic is all about. So we are the rebels.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the earth gong, and this gong is calibrated to the movement of the earth around the sun. And this is rooted in, Pythagorean theory, and it was calculated by Kepler in the mid-1600s, and then it was confirmed by a German mathematician, Hans Kusto, in the early, probably in the 1950s. And they're accurate to the 100th hertz, and basically, if we had ears big enough to hear, if we were standing on Venus and Earth came zooming by, this is what it would sound like. So it's the 365 Earth cycle as it moves around the sun with all the 4 seasons. And it's really powerful because it's the sound that connects us to the experience that we're actually having on the planet right now. And for me, this is a much better news report than turning on the TV, because even though it's just a gong sitting right here, it still puts us in the cycle of what the earth is experiencing at this time right now. And it's a very dynamic gong. It sounds very bizarre and strange, but it will sound different on different days. And I really believe that in my experience, I actually do, on some level, experience what the earth as a living being is experiencing as it's just moving through space. It's very, very powerful. So I'll start by warming it up a little bit. And actually, I'll play the one below it too, kind of play them together. The one below it is the precession of the equinoxes. It's the 26,000 year cycle of the earth moving through all the signs of the zodiac, which is very vast and expansive, which is key in the Mayan prophecy of what's happening in 2012, which is certainly not the end of the world. It's just the beginning of a whole brand new groovy cycle.
We need to have the microphone.
Oh, yeah.
Just lay it over the pillow as close to the gongs as possible.
They're pretty loud.
Well,
let's see.
Actually, probably move the pillow because it's in the way of the...
Oh, no,
Oh, that's fine.
The little cushion fell off of it.
Yeah, we'll find it. Actually, take the pillow away because it's in the... Yeah, it's blocking them.
Rudy?
Yeah, are we just going to be with the 2 gongs or the ones on the right as well?
Yeah, let's start with these.
Okay.
pretty special time.
Thank you.
Thank you.